Hey, what is up? This is Christian with Journey with Christian Podcast, and I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have someone incredible, a great couple that is just on fire for Christ. Ben and Colette, they've going out there and actually in different areas, and I can't tell you where just for their security, but different places that they go out to different countries and to sharing the gospel, and it's just so inspiring to see what they're doing. And man, you're going to learn so much from this podcast, so check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining in with Christian podcast with Christian Evans. Guys, we have someone, some really great couple today that we're just so excited to have them on. This individual, this couple that we were able to actually network with from my sister. She actually traveled around the world in different countries, and we're able to meet this great couple that started in the mission life at a very young age. They had a passion for it. They knew what they were going for. And they are the essence of missionaries. They're going out there not in the best of circumstances, but for the Word of God and to spread His Word. And I'm just so excited to have Ben and Colette on this podcast to share their story, to share some wisdom, some different perspective and their lifestyle. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome Ben and Colette. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing, Ben and Colette?
Hi, we're so good.
You're so good.
Yeah, we're really happy to be here with you.
Good. I am so glad to guys have you on. I just, obviously, from your perspective, and you're young, you're vibrant, you're right there in the battlefield a little bit, so it's really so cool. If you don't mind, kind of Ben and Colette, if you would just, Ben, you and I were talking a little bit about your history, but if you could just share a little bit of your history, both of you, and your in the way you kind of decided to go down this route, if you will.
Yeah, I'll let Colette share first.
All right. Yeah. So basically, from a really young age, I heard about missions. I definitely didn't fully know what that meant to be a missionary. But my parents, they remember just me telling them at a really young age, I think maybe like 7 or 8, that I wanted to be a missionary. And they were like, okay, you go for it. And of course, I wanted to do like so many other things among that. But it's just always been in my heart to just share what Jesus has done and what He is to me. And I knew that I wanted to travel around to places that didn't really have that access and just share that with them. And so I think it was just something I wanted to do from a young age. My grandparents, they took me to China on a short-term missions trip when I was 12. And we visited orphanages. We did all sorts of fun little things. And I just remember falling in love with just the missions life. And I did not have a clue what that would look like for my future, but I just knew that that was what the Lord wanted for me. And so, yeah, for me, it was just, I've always wanted to do it. And then when I met Ben, we both kind of decided together to go after that, which was just such a blessing. And I think his story is a little bit different, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I graduated Bible school, kind of just wanted to be like a youth pastor or a pastor. But when I graduated, a lot of the time when you graduate from Bible school, you kind of get like a gig, a ministry job just from right out of the chute, But I didn't get one. And so I was home for about 3 years, just me and the Lord, just working like a typical job. And it was during that time that it was just reading the scriptures one day, and I just read the Great Commission, and it finally just snapped within me. And it was just a command to go. And so it was just a simple gesture in my heart where I was like, Jesus, I want to obey this. Where are you needed the most? And I'll go there. And it was simply just that for me. It wasn't necessarily a voice from heaven telling me to go, but it was just my heart to love Him. And that's why I went.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. That is really incredible. And obviously I know, Ben, you were telling me, obviously Colette had a, like you were just saying, very young age, that you kind of started into it. And what I find very interesting is the, you were right there on the battlefield right at the very beginning, Colette, obviously being very young and kind of seeing that. And you said that was with your family members. So, at what point did you kind of realize, like, this is the life I want to live. This is the passion. This is kind of what God is calling me. And obviously, kind of how it led you to the path you're on right now. What country you guys decided to go and actually really kind of build your roots and build your community?
Yeah, so I think for me, it started to really hit home in high school, where all of my friends around me are making decisions about where they want to go to college. What do we want to do with our lives? It was a big thing that we were talking about in our circle of friends. And I just kept weighing my life before the Lord. And I knew that this is something that would be worth it. And that was my passion. And so I was like, okay, Lord, I think this is what I want to do. I'm going to go after it. And there were other things that would come up. Like, what if I want to do this? I was really good at soccer. I was like, what if I want to get a scholarship to a good university for soccer? And other passions would come up too. But I just felt like this was something that would be so special and very unique and different from my friends, which was a little bit of a struggle at first. But I decided, instead of going to just a regular university, to go to Bible college. I just wanted to be just firm in the Lord and my identity in Him. And so that's why I chose to do that. I knew that I needed spiritual mentorship before being sent out. And so I decided to go to Christ for the Nations Institute just to be built up in my faith before I left. And so while I was there, I went for the purpose of being sent out by them eventually. But towards the end of my time there, the missions program kind of took a break. And so there was this gap for me. And so I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be sent out with. And that's actually where Ben came into my life. And we met. So he actually went to the same Bible college, but we met later on after he graduated. And it was just so sweet because as we were becoming friends, he knew that this was the path I wanted to go on. And I think that's kind of when you were making that decision too. And so I don't know, maybe you can add to that part of the story.
Yeah. So I met her and she was already just a woman who was very set on going out to the mission field. And I was in the process. I already had that encounter with the Lord, just reading the scriptures, and was ready to go. And that's when I met Colette. And then 9 months later, we started dating. And so by that time, she was about to graduate, and I already found the missions training place that I wanted to be sent out of. And I pretty much, I guess, convinced her to come and join me on it. And we were very serious. And I think right after we finished that training school, we got married. Oh yeah, I didn't think we for sure got married.
No doubt about it.
right after the training school. And so yeah.
And so you were saying about like what location we chose. And so while we were in that training school that we decided to do together, it was based in Colorado Springs. We did a couple months first of just training and different things, but mostly like the study of Jesus first. And just like, what does it look like to be a missionary? And their goal was basically just to give people a chance to taste what it's like to be a missionary on the field. And so they opened up several different locations in the 1040 window that we could choose from to go for a couple months and to just experience that kind of lifestyle. And so the Lord made it really clear to us that we would go to India. And so that's where we chose to do our short-term trip. And honestly, it was like, as soon as we got there, we just fell in love. We're like, we are so certain that this is the place for us for the next few years. And so, yeah, just from that very moment, like our love for India grew and grew, and definitely hasn't stopped growing ever since. For sure. And
and we actually entered this Bible school. This missions training facility. It's called Acts. We actually entered into it hoping that we would be able to go to the Himalayas, because during that time when we were dating, the Lord started to speak to us about Nepal and the Himalayas and the Himalayan people. And we're like, okay, great. Maybe they'll on this short-term trip, we'll be able to go to the Himalayas. Mm-hmm. But they didn't offer it that year. And then, but they did offer India. And we were like, well, Lord, we still feel like you're telling us to go to India. And so we just went to India, and it was a hard 3 months, but it wasn't in one of the prettier places of the world. And definitely not pretty, and we were definitely sick all 3 months the entire time, and
gracious.
It was definitely a very hard trip. But when we got back at the end of the trip, we had to make a decision to see if we wanted to stay long term with that company, or just to come home and do something else. And so at the end of the trip, we decided, even though we're sick, even though it's been hard, it's been so fruitful, and we would give our lives to this place. And so we said yes to going back into sickness and everything. And so we came home, we got married, and then we went right back out, which was great. And it actually wasn't as hard as our short-term trip was. So it was great.
We weren't sick the whole time.
Right.
Praise God.
Cool. Well, I think it's really cool because, just from obviously interviewing both of you, and I always love just talking to couples because it's always interesting. You can really get to know their relationship between each other, and you guys just seem like you guys have a really, natural, really flowing, just you guys connect very well on a deeper level. You guys just are, it's just cool to hear, obviously, you guys' story in that. And I think also, Colette and Ben, you both said this, very interesting to me, because I see this a lot. You're good at this, and you're good at soccer, and you're doing all these other things, and then all of a sudden God stops all those opportunities and pulls you in this other direction. And I'm curious, my next question really is, when you get that pull, is it very obvious, or would you say, is it kind of like, it's kind of this underlining, thing that some things just don't work out, or is it like a very obvious thing? I'm just curious, what did you experience? Was it very, very like, this is it, this is a decision, or is it kind of like, indecisiveness, if you will?
Well, we can backtrack with me. So, in high school, I was kind of a guy that was kind of following the Lord, and didn't start following him till I got into college. And I was headed down the path to do college athletics for football. And then my junior year, I got injured really, really bad and got super, super depressed. And at that time, I didn't know, I had some kind of relationship with the Lord, but I never expected to be where I was during that time. And so, but when I felt like the calling to read the scriptures, when I felt called to the mission field by reading the scriptures, it didn't feel like anything to me at all. It was just like my mind was clear for the first time, that the scriptures said go. The Great Commission just said go and make disciples of all nations. And I was like, okay, I will just simply go do that. And it was, for me, it wasn't a feeling. Like I said earlier, it wasn't like a voice of the Lord. It was just like, Lord, I love you and I want to obey you. And that's what it looked like for me.
Right. And it could have been, for me, it could have been the voice of the Lord saying, go play soccer, and glorify me there on the soccer field instead of the mission field. But I felt like that was where he was leading. And so he's always speaking. And so if you're listening to his voice, it's always going to be worth it to follow that voice. And he knows everything that he made you for, because he made you specifically and uniquely. And and so for me, it was just, he was calling me out to the mission field. And so that was the best place for me.
Yeah. And we know of people who have had audible voice or dreams or things like that happen, where they're like, okay, I know this is God. And they were just like, I definitely was never going to be a missionary. And then the Lord came to me in a dream and was like, hey, can you go do this for me? And it changed everything for them. But for us, I think it was just like, if it was a still small voice, it was a very still small voice. Yeah. And it was just more of like, Lord, I love you and I want to obey you.
100%. Yeah. And what I find, because maybe I don't know, and I'd love to ask you guys this, because when you go out in that mission, it is taking a risk. And, and sometimes you have some family members or some people around you that aren't 100% supportive, And so I'm curious, did you guys experience that at all, or did you have 100% support? And if you did experience it, how did you overcome that? I'm curious.
Yeah. I think we had both. We had people who were like, wow, go do it, go follow the Lord. And then we had other people who were like, make sure that you're doing the right decision, or we don't think you're doing the right decision. Yeah. I had like some of my own family members be like, Ben, you're so smart. You're just going to throw it all away. And so for me, I just realized that nothing is wasted when you pour it out on Jesus's feet. And it was just that. And I was very inspired by the Mary of Bethany lifestyle, where you just waste your life to Jesus and give him everything. And whether it's in this life or in the next, like it'll totally be worth it. And it was just that simple thing. And I realized that if people weren't for me, then the Lord is always for me. And that's the only comfort that I needed.
Yeah, I think we still even get that, probably more so now that we're back to visit and we have a baby on the way. There's a lot of people that are just like, okay, well, you went out and you had your time in India for a couple of years. So now what are you going to do with your life? Like, now what kind of real job are you going to get? Right. And we just laugh to ourselves, just because, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but this is where he has us. And yeah, just like Ben said, anywhere that he leads, whether it looks ridiculous or not, like, it's going to be so worth it. And so any kind of risk that we're going to take for his glory, like, it's always going to be worth it, no matter what it looks like.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, because, I always find it very interesting. We sit there and we think, and that's why our podcast is much about like mentorship and significance. How many times do we go out there, and a lot of people are, quote unquote successful, right, in life, that have all this stuff, but they're 2 or 3 times divorced. They don't know their kids. They got a whole bunch of stuff, but like at the end of the day, they're on their dying bed and nobody's around them. And I think there's like you just said, there's a lot of value and a lot of wisdom to understand. What? When I surround myself with the right individuals and relationships that God has put in my hand, and significance is much more than a whole bunch of stuff. It is significance to change someone's life in India.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's really cool to see that. And you were saying a little bit about, obviously the spiritual mentorship. And mentorship is so undervalued in today's world. And I'm just curious, to be in a country where, you have to plant your flag, you have to be very foundational, and you have to be submitted in God's word. I'm curious, with that, who would be some of your mentors or spiritual mentors that were part of your life to help you kind of really cement that, if you will?
Yeah. So for me, my first mentor that I had, I came back from Bible college, and it was just this old hippie dude, and he loved the Lord, and he got saved during the Jesus movement back in the 70s. And he was just a divorced dad. His wife left him many years ago, and I grew up with his kids, and one of his kids is off in college, and the other kid is in Iraq on the mission field. And his name was Andy, and Andy just believed in me, and that was the biggest thing. And he just enabled me to dream. I think that one of the key things in all the mentors that I've had is they're just someone who empowers you to dream, and just says, yeah, you can do this, and I'll help you get there. Because we super believe in mentorship, and we call it like fathering, like people. And so we super believe in fathering. It's like our biggest thing. And even like when we make disciples, it is definitely like a fathering movement. And so, yeah, so Andy was my first one. Because I didn't know what I was really doing with my life, and we would wake up every morning and we would pray for 2 hours a day together, and then before we went to bed, we would read and pray together for another 2 hours. And he just taught me intimacy with Jesus, and that it was so simple and so easy, and that God desired to dream with me, and that the dreams that I had were dreams that he put in my heart. And then the second person is Lou Engle. He's just been an amazing influencer in my life, and he's another guy who's all about praying and fasting, and he's another big influence that was just like dream with the Lord and go and run and go do it.
Right.
And then the third one is a really close friend of mine. His name's Stephen Najira, and he's just a father, you know. He's my best friend, but he's also like a father mentor to me. And they all do the same thing. They're all just like, I'm here for you. Let's dream together.
Yeah.
Let's make these dreams come true for you.
Right.
And that's kind of the way that it's been.
Yeah, I think all of them have just been so influential in the way that they have fathered, I mean, even me too, through Ben, but just how they believe in us and actually desire to, you know how that saying goes, just like, my ceiling is your floor. That's like the mentality of a father should be like, I'm like gonna lay down everything to promote you. And I mean, that's what the Father does for us. And so I think that all these three people that Ben mentioned, what they did and why it was so significant is they were laying down everything and they were just saying, hey, I see all of these great and wonderful things in you. Now, like, go and believe for the impossible, you know, like, just don't be afraid to dream wild dreams, I guess. And so, yeah, I think those are some of the main reasons why they were so influential to us.
And that's really cool. We see, because, you know, so I'm curious, when you were reaching out to these individuals, were they just part in your life and then you were like, you know what, I value these people as mentors? Or was it like we had a mentorship relationship where he knew that he was the biggest key influence, or they were biggest key influencers in your life? I'm just curious with that relationship. How did that look? Just so our audience understands kind of the value that you obviously placed in the prioritization of mentorship in your life.
Yeah. So with Andy, I needed a job outside of school, and he had the job for me, but he was like, hey, you don't need to go home and live with your parents. He's like, you can just live with me. And he's like, and I can pretty much train you. He told me, he's like, I can just help raise you up to be like a father and a husband and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, great. And I'm a 22-year-old kid right out of college and needing a job, needing money real quick. And so I moved in with him, and we just built a relationship out of that. And the relationship wasn't always the best. Like, I mean, it's two grown men living together, and sometimes there's arguing, and sometimes, but 99% of the time, it's just laughing and living life together. And I think Andy was my first mentor. And even throughout Bible college, we just saw so many Bible college students that were like, oh, I really want mentorship. I really want this, and I really want this. And all of our friends just seemed to have like mentors from like the big name preachers and the people who traveled around the world. And we were actually like kind of jealous and hurt from that, because it's like, oh, why weren't we chosen? And so Andy, this nobody that really nobody knows about, he was just like, come live with me and I'll help you in your walk and I'll help you in the practicalities of life. And that was great. And then
and on a side note to that is actually something, after me and Ben got married, we realized that we had those like little wounds in our hearts of like, oh man, we just long to be like fathered, and we long to be invested in, and it was actually something the Lord led us to kind of lay at his feet, and to just realize that like only the actual Father can father us well and the best. And so I think it was after we like laid that down that the Lord really showed us the significance of mentorship. Yeah. And that's actually when he brought us in Lou Engle as a spiritual mentor.
Yeah, and it was very much, it was like a day we were like on a bench, and we were about to head out overseas, and we're just like, man, we're not going to have anybody to pour into us. And it was just kind of something like that. And then the Lord just kind of spoke to us, and he's like, if nobody fathers you, I'll father you. And wow. And it's just great to have the Lord as your father. And so we were just like, Lord, we, above all men, we want to have you as our father. And even like how we father people now, we first point them to having the Lord as their father and being extremely identified with, I'm a son and God is my father, because men will hurt you all the time. Men will, they're not perfect, you know. Yeah. Heavenly Father is perfect, and it's so lovely to be fathered by someone who truly cares and who will never hurt you.
For sure.
Unconditionally, 100%. Yeah. That's really cool. And so I'm curious, like, you know, obviously being leaders and going to this next phase of life, if you will, your next destination, how do you guys implement mentorship? What is your system? What is your kind of, because what I found very interesting is that it's very hard to really get down into someone, and you really have to really be a really great mentor to see the best in someone and really get the best out of them, is to really understand and be fully 100% open. But in order to do that, that's very vulnerable, and I'm just curious, what is your way of really kind of getting into someone, really, getting to that deep heart and those problems that they may be facing. I'm just curious your system, I guess, and your kind of that relational aspect.
Yeah. So for the vulnerability question, I think even in our own marriage, even when I was pursuing Colette, because even before we started dating, we were friends, but even before we were friends, I was also kind of her mentor.
Yeah.
And so, which was funny. I mean, I'm 5 years older than her.
Oh, nice.
And so when I first met her and her friends, it was actually through like a discipleship thing that I was doing, because I just made it up in my heart to love that group of friends with everything that I had.
Yeah.
And I didn't care if they hated me. Go ahead.
Basically, he just came to me and my group of guy and girlfriends, and he was just like, hey, I just got a lot of breakthrough in my life through the Lord and just the way that he has mentored me. And I just want to be y'all's friend and basically just share everything that that the Lord has just revealed to me, and I want to share it with you. And so me and my friends were just like, yeah, this is great. We need it. We need all the help we can get. And so that's kind of how our mentorship with Ben, or that started with him.
Yeah, and then later on, me and Colette fell in love and got married. But not all the schools.
Because I know also, if you don't mind sharing your great news that you mentioned as well. I heard that you guys just have some really cool news.
Yeah, we actually we're actually back in the States off the mission field because we're pregnant.
Yeah.
And we found out a couple of days ago that we're having a little girl.
Yes.
So little girl, is that what? Oh my gracious.
Yeah, we just found out on Christmas Eve. It was the best present.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you guys are already looking at different names and little girl names, aren't you? Huh?
Oh yeah.
You know it.
You know, man.
How cool. Well, going back to mentorship, it's really awesome to see that. It's very refreshing because, like I mentioned, it's so undervalued, and I'm always just intrigued and very intrigued to learn. Obviously people's way of getting to figure out their mentorship and their way of doing things. So I'm curious, kind of like, what would you guys say is your definition of mentorship when you get into relationship and get the most out of someone and your mentor-mentee relationship? What is your guys' definition, if you will?
We're both about to talk at the same time.
You can go.
Okay, I'll go. Well, just as you're talking, I was just thinking how a lot of people think that to be a mentor, you have to have it all together. You have to know exactly what you're doing. But the reality is you're just helping somebody out that is maybe 1 or 2 steps behind you. And like Ben, he was 5 years ahead of me, and he had just received like revelation from the Lord that I didn't have yet. And basically he just came to us and said like, hey, I could offer you this, or I can help you out. And all that looked like was living life with us. And it meant like him being like a father, basically, just to his mentors and giving us maybe what he didn't have at that age or whatever it looks like, but just walking with us through life. And just like the small things, it doesn't have to be big. I mean, with our relationship with our mentors right now, it's like, it's a phone call maybe once or twice a month, if that.
Okay.
And it's just like them saying, hey, we believe in you. Like, we're with you. What's going on in your life? How can we help you? How can we pray for you? All these things. But I think a lot of people make it up to be something that is so big, but it's like day-to-day life, and it's calling out what you see, whether that's their blind spots and things that they do need to bring before the Lord that are negative or sin, whatever that looks like, or if it's just the gold that's in them, or if it's just hearing words of affirmation.
Yeah.
But I think it can look very different for each person because every person is very different too.
Yeah, and I think for me, mentorship like I said earlier, it's just fathering.
Yeah.
And what fathers do is they take everything out of themselves to promote the person. And so, and I'll reach out to anyone and everyone, but not everybody wants to reciprocate the kind of like the love back, so to speak, or not everybody wants to be mentored. Not everybody wants to be fathered, and that's okay. But for me, it's just simply walking through life with an individual and them walking through life with you, and it's just a relationship and you guys loving each other well, and I'm a very big advocate of mentees living with their mentors, just because you live life with them, you live every day with them, and that's what shaped me. I mean, even when we're we're actually moving to a different location in a little while to Indonesia, and we're trying to get a bigger house so we can have our future disciples and the other people that we've discipled in India even come live with us. And even while we were living in India, we would open up our house and be like, if you need to come live with us, come live with us. It's just simply walking through life with them every day, through the practical things, through the spiritual things. But it's really, and I think as the mentor, like, you can only go as far with an individual as vulnerable as the mentor is. And so for me, like your question earlier was, how do you get down to the nitty gritty? How do you get down to the vulnerability? Well, as the mentor, you set the standard. You lay it all bare. You lay everything out. You hold nothing back, because Jesus didn't hold anything back from us, And so you lay yourself bare to them. And if they reject you, that's fine. But that sets you laying it all bare and being vulnerable, sets the standard. And for a person who's never been like that before, they've been like, wow, he's like that. He's laid it all out. I can lay myself out like that as well,
this
too.
This is a safe place. I can be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's safe. I can be vulnerable. And so for us, we set that standard. And and another reason why people live with you, it's like they see you like behind closed doors. They see every argument, they see every they see your sin, they see your flaws, and it ruins like the mentor perfection syndrome, like where a lot of people look at their mentor like, this person has it all together, I want to be mentored by him, and he can do nothing wrong. So when that mentor leader does something wrong, they're like crushed. And so we open our doors and we show all of our junk, and we will look, and in the hopes that they'll open their doors, they'll show their drunk. I mean, not that they're drunk, but they will show their junk, and and we just love them through their mess. And I don't think any mess is too big, and that's another thing too. Because a lot of times when you invest in someone, you don't really know how big their mess is. But the thing is, we've made it up in our hearts to love that person, to love that one person in front of us with everything that they have, with everything that we have. And people will want to receive it, and some people don't. And so the people that want to receive it keep coming back, and we keep giving them more. And that's what we do.
Dude, I appreciate you guys really sharing that, because that is a really great, and my listeners, I hope you guys really take that mentorship definition, what they mentioned, that perspective, and really take it home, because my gracious, what he was saying is just so valuable. Whether you're a mentee and you're just starting that relationship, or you're an actual mentor and you want to get the most out of your mentees, and really, obviously, you really want to impact their lives, and that's how you do it, is by really being authentic, being open. However, though, I do know that when you're being fully open, you're going to get hurt. People are going to hurt you because your heart's out there on the table.
For sure.
And that's the tough part. But again, that's what Jesus does all the time, and yet people still don't worship him, and that's okay, because he still loves them regardless, and regardless of all our sins and stuff. And I think that's really, really awesome perspective, and appreciate that. To just kind of switch it up a little bit, because I think it's very interesting. Mentorship is a very interesting thing, because it's one of those things where you can be very categorizational, where this one person is very good, maybe like financially. He's set up very good. He can be my mentor in financially, but he's divorced 2 or 3 times. So as a mentee, you got to be very aware of, okay, do I want their life holistically? because
Right.
if they breathe into your life, you got to make sure that they have what you want holistically, and a spiritual life, and a marriage, a relational, and so I think that's really, really great perspective, guys. I really appreciate that, sharing that. So I'm just curious, as well, when you go into these new countries, building a community is one of the biggest things, being very relational. Now when you go into a country, is that kind of relationship, is that community already built, or is that you guys are going in cold basically, and you have to go out there and build that from scratch? I'm just curious with your kind of that leadership, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it depends on, we're lucky enough to have a team that goes with us. So we have a community within that team. But as a rule of our team, we kind of take the picture of, we are holding hands in a circle, but we're facing the outside of the circle. And what that means is that we're not like an inclusive team where it's only about ourselves and we're only growing in community of ourselves, but it's a team that is outwardly focused. And so in the sense of, we have community, like we have community back in the States and we have community overseas with our team, but through that community, we're always reaching out to the people, to the locals. And like when we think of our future team as well, we think, oh, these are Indonesians, these are Nepalis. When we think of having close family friends, it's like, oh, it's not just going to be another American. It's not going to just be a person on our mission team. It's actually going to be a future Indonesian. It's going to be a future whatever, So in a sense, we have a good base with our Western team that we have, but everything is starting from scratch outside of that and reaching out to the locals. And so, like, one of the things that me and Colette will do, you just move into a community you move into a community of non-Westerners and all foreigners. And even in the States, like, if we were ever to come back into the States, we've made it in our hearts, like, we'll live in like an apartment complex that has all foreigners in it, or we'll live in a foreign neighborhood in the U.S. And it's just stuff that we've thought about. And because you're even reaching the nations in the United States. But yeah, it can be, like I said, we're lucky to have community because of our team that we have, and our new company is called Kairos Global. And so we already have like 14 or 20 other people over there in Indonesia right now. But the whole focus is go and make community with the locals and onto the ends of the earth, kind of.
Yeah.
And so that looks like just moving into a neighborhood where there's no white people, and you adopting culture, and you adopting their language, their food, and or
reaching out to the neighbors.
Or if you're single, like we tell our singles, hey, go move in with a foreign family. Like, let them, like, just kind of be their kid. And and sometimes it looks scary, or sometimes it sounds scary, but from what we've seen, a lot of the time it's like a beautiful thing. And we had a lot of friends do that while in India. And so, yeah, lots of it looks like starting from the ground up, but you also have that good foundation to fall back into, especially if you're getting like homesick and things like that. And so it's good.
That's good. And I think what you just said is really interesting, because it is that, nothing really happens amazing if you're in your comfort zone. The things that really happen amazing, astounding in your life is in that uncomfort. But it takes intentional decisions to be in that uncomfort. Just like you said, go living with a family, living in a neighborhood that is intentionally, diverse. And I find that very interesting. So I'm curious, as a family, as a newfound family, very young, vibrant, you obviously, you and Colette, Ben, you guys sit and obviously have these conversations. For those that are not maybe yet married, or that are married, what allows you guys to be on that same page? Or what could you say to that younger couple that kind of like, husband's going this way, the wife's going this way, and they're not kind of achieving the same dreams and goals, if you will? Because then what happens is, a split family, if you will. So I'm just curious what kind of advice you could say to that younger family.
I mean, for a younger family, I'll speak as a husband. When we look at the role of Jesus, it says that he is our husband, and he commands husbands to lay his life down as he loves the church. But when I got married to Colette, it was with every intention that all of my hopes and dreams and everything that I had in me, I'm laying it down for the promotion of my wife. And because that's what Jesus does for us. And that's how I view a relationship. And then Colette can.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. I think even in that, as Ben was telling me early on, even before we're married, that he's planning on just laying down his dreams and hopes for the promotion of mine. I mean, any woman who hears that, you just want to lay yours right back down and be like, no, I want yours too, you know? And so I think if you keep that mindset that like we're one and we both have dreams that are separate, but they're actually one, you know, like, I love leading worship, and Ben's really good at it too, but it's not like one of his great passions, but he does it with me, you know, just because he loves me and he wants me to be happy. And so I think that as long as you guys stay open in your communication and vulnerable, and not just like hiding your expectations, but letting that be known to your husband or to your wife, it will definitely benefit you, because as long as you're staying in that humble position of just promoting the other, that other person is always going to want to promote you back. Well, mostly, but
I think when in doubt, always take the humble route. Because it's a promise that the humble will be exalted, and that's a promise from the Lord. And so you can never go wrong in being humble.
Right.
And it's hard sometimes. And I think it's harder for a lot of husbands too, because it's like we've got to the stage where we're providing for our family. Even going to the mission field, it's like, oh my gosh. Like before, I had a really, really good job. And now I'm selling all that I have and taking my wife to a scary land where there's like 5 Christians and where they kill Christians. And I'm like, it's just smart. Oh my gosh, am I putting my wife at risk? And like now she's pregnant. Am I putting my kid at risk? Like, so there's so many fears. But then again, at the same time, it's leaning on the Lord. And I think that's just one of the biggest things that we've just taken away is, it's just following the Lamb wherever he leads. And sometimes following the Lamb can be extremely terrifying. But he knows what's best for us, and he knows what's good for us, and we'll follow him. And we even have this thing, if we're wrong, then we're wrong. He's like such a good dad that he can fix our mistakes easily, and he's not gonna like beat us up for choosing the wrong thing, because our hearts are set to obey him and to follow him. And if we accidentally misheard him, then he'll be quick to correct it.
And I think even with that, there are times and like seasons where maybe one is in the spotlight, you know, or like our seasons don't always look the same, you know. We're different people, and so maybe there's one season where I'm like really flourishing, and like the Lord is just, it seems like there's a spotlight on me or whatever, and Ben is just so hidden away, you know. And I think that's just a great time just to be like, okay, yes, this is a time that the Lord is like eyes are on her right now, and that's good. This is a time for me to like go low and to be hidden and to just lean on the Lord in that way. And then roles are reversed, you know. And so I think sometimes it just looks different in every season too. And so sometimes we're working together and both of our dreams are being fulfilled or coming true, and sometimes not, and that's okay. But just as long as you guys are open with each other and always leaning on the Lord together, then everything will work out great.
And I think that's a huge part, that it's recognizing I call it like recognizing the glory. So it's like recognizing when that person is being exalted, because the Lord's exalting that person in this season. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get underneath this person and partner with what the Lord's already doing and exalt the person as well. Not like worship the person, but like I'm going to even like in ministry, if I see like one of my friends being promoted really quick, if I see one of my friends, just like the hand of the Lord is on them, like, dude, I'll give them money. I'll do whatever it takes to promote that person. And so I take that in the same thing with my wife. And we just do that. And so it's just recognizing, I call it recognizing the glory, but it's just recognizing who the hand of the Lord is on, and partnering with the Lord and saying, Lord, your hand is on this person, and I'm going to partner with you. And become a partner with that person as well.
Definitely. And it's interesting because, like you was just saying, I've seen this numerous times in different leadership, whether it be business or missions or whatever, where, you got someone that is that higher position, if you will, and they get scared because one of their fellow mentees or something like that are really flourishing, excelling, and exploding in a lot of spotlight. And obviously there's that jealousy and there's that pride, and it takes humility and it takes a really high self-image to really be confident with who you are and acknowledge that, hey, you know what, I'm very confident with who I am. And because of that, that's why I can just lift this other person up. Because we're not in competition. It is this concept of, hey, you know what, they're really good at this thing and I'm good at this thing, and we can coincide together very well. And so I really appreciate that perspective, and I think that's really cool. You guys, I don't think I know, how old are you guys? You guys are...
Yeah, I am 24.
And I'm 29.
Gracious, wow, so young, and obviously a lot of wisdom in that. So I think that's really, really cool.
Thank you.
I think that. So now I want to, I know we've got you on for quite a while, and I really appreciate you guys' time. But I just want to ask you, maybe one last question, if you will. With this spiritual journey, everybody, and Ben, you and I, we were talking about this a little bit, but I'd love to hear your perspective as well, Colette. But we were talking about, of course, people's journey spiritually. Everybody has a different spiritual journey, and obviously getting more cemented in their belief in knowing God and hearing God, and you have to be in the Word every single day. And everybody's picture for that is different. And sometimes people get too legalistic. And I'm just curious, what do you guys do every single day? Do you guys kind of do it together as a couple, or do you guys do your own little spiritual time with God? Or I'm just curious. I'd love to hear your everyday kind of thing, or maybe it may not be every day.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a time where the Lord is. I have a lot of time on my hands right now, just because we're in the phase of raising money to go back out to live on the field, and so there's a lot of extra time that I have. And so the Lord is just given us a lot of time to be with Him. And even in that, there's been times where I've missed being with the Lord, or I haven't gone to the Word, and He's been just showing me so much grace and just teaching me what it means to live inside His grace, and that I'm not doing anything wrong by not being with Him on the daily. But for the most part, daily, it looks like me waking up and just having my morning coffee out on the porch, or if it's too cold, then somewhere else, and just being with Him. And honestly, it looks like a lot of singing the Word, which may sound silly to some people, but that is one of my favorite ways to commune with Jesus, is by singing to Him. And it's just also one of those ways that the Word really gets in me, because I can read verses over and over or meditate on them, but sometimes there's just something different about singing that really hits your heart in a different way. And so sometimes it looks like that with my guitar, sometimes it's not that at all, and it's just me talking with the Lord, or even just sitting and listening and being quiet. And sometimes I hear Him and sometimes I don't, and that's okay. And I think it's just setting that time apart to be with Him for a good amount of time in the day, but also just all throughout the day, cultivating that mindset of just acknowledging His presence in every moment. If my family is laughing at a joke that my brother just told, I'm just I look around at my family and I'm just in my heart thanking Him for joy in our family, just thanking Him for being present with us always, and whatever it looks like. Just I feel like me and Ben always listen and hear things from the Lord when we're doing dishes. And so just doing those small mundane things, acknowledging that He's there, acknowledging that He's watching you, that His eyes are on you, that He's thinking about you all throughout the day. And so those are the things that really keep me connected to Him.
Yeah, and I think, just to piggyback off of that, it's the realization that all that you do unto the glorification of the Lord. And a relationship isn't just an hour of your day. A relationship isn't just a sermon on Sunday. A relationship is 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, And and a lot of mornings I'll wake up and I'll go out to the truck and put on a CD and read the Bible and sing to the Lord in the truck. And that could be anywhere from 10 minutes to a couple hours. But and like I was telling you earlier, that I think it's very vital that people do have like a schedule set aside, saying, okay, Lord, I'm going to meet with you at this time and this time. But at the same time, I mean, it's a relationship. You commune with him every single day, all throughout your day. And if everything that I do glorifies him, that means the way that I love my wife, that means the way that I provide for her, that means the way that I talk to the gas station clerk. Everything that I'm doing is glorifying the Father. And I for me personally, I just see the Lord so much more in the mundane of life. Like she was saying, most of my revelation comes from being in the bathroom or taking a shower or washing dishes, and it's like always when I like least expect it, you know. But a lot of the time too, in your Jesus time, it's not like we hear like this big booming audible voice. It's not okay that you get touched by the Lord, but I'm being faithful with those meetings with him every day just because I love him. And I think, and when you love somebody, you're going to spend as much time as you can with them. I think the thing that's impacted us the most in relationship is the more you pursue relationship, the more you know him, and the more you want to be pursuing a relationship even more, because he really is the beauty of the nations, and he really is like who and what our hearts long for. And every day it's a joy to give it to him, and every day it's a joy to find something new about him. And maybe we don't find something new every single day, but I mean, it's still knowing him every single day and still communing with him throughout our day. And that's what I loved.
And you asked if we do it together. We don't really pray a whole lot together every day, but a lot of times we're just talking about the Lord and just the things that he's showing us. And if we did get a revelation, or if he did speak to us that day individually, we are always sharing it with each other. And I think that's one of the ways that we cultivate our love for the Lord as a couple, is literally just talking about what he's showing us. And it happens a lot of times in the car. We're just driving somewhere, and maybe just a thought will come to my mind, and we'll just talk about it, and we'll share our revelation with the Lord, of the Lord. And so I think that's one of the ways that we just do it together.
That's incredible. And it's funny because Colette, when Ben and I, we were talking about that, he gave almost the exact same answers. So obviously you guys are very on the same page, and that's really cool to see that every day. You just, like you said, you don't have to be very, categorizational, like every hour I'm, spend the time, and then it's throughout the whole day. And I think that's just, that's just a cool perspective. And it really it helps people that have that kind of legalistic mindset kind of relax and say, this is just throughout the whole day, and it's my whole life, and it's a whole relationship. Instead of having this, I missed it today, and I feel guilty in this whole, circular thing down the wrong path. And so I think that's really cool, guys. Well, guys, I thank you so much for your guys' time. I mean, Ben and Colette, I've learned a lot from just chit-chatting with both of you. I hope our audience, our interview, our audience and our listeners were able to listen and just take so much from you guys. So I really appreciate it. I just want to do a little plug in. Where can they follow you? Where can they, obviously if they're led to obviously support you in your adventure, and obviously, follow your story, and obviously see, your little girl, grow up and stuff. We would love to just, where can they find you?
Yeah, we're both on social media. If you find either one of us, so you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on Instagram. On Instagram, my name is Benjamin Klawinski. The last name is spelled Klawinski. And through me, you can find Colette. And if people are wanting to give to our organization or give to me and Colette personally, you can. Our website is kairosglobal.co, and you can find your way into the giving section, and then we have a special giving ID, which is B44171K, and all your proceeds will go directly to us. And again, that missionary ID is B44171K. 171K, and that's at kairosglobal.co.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this. It's been such an honor just to talk with you.
Again, no, it was a pleasure just chit-chatting with you, and again, just learning a lot of your wisdom. And again, we look forward to having you on a little bit longer, and as well as in your future adventures. It's just thank you so much, guys. You have a wonderful day. All right, thank you.